Hello, everybody. Welcome to this very special session about Inside the Noon Retreat. I'm Eleanor Mills, the founder of Noon. And what's really exciting is that we have with us here today some of the amazing women who came with us on our first on the retreat that we ran in October, which is really exciting. And I wanted to give all of you who are thinking about whether you might like to come just a bit of a taste of kind of what it is, because it's quite slightly hard to understand what a reboot retreat might mean. So the whole point of what we try to do at Noon is to give people a kind of chance to take stock on their life and to just kind of breathe for a moment and take a bit of space and have a bit of time to yourself and just really assess where you are, in the hope, in fact, the knowledge that only by knowing where we are can we then decide where we might want to be. And often in the hurly-burly of life, and we all know what that's like, you can really lose track of who you are and what that ultimate goal is. And I really know about that. It happened to me. And then suddenly you find yourself having to kind of cut through a lot of all the kind of foliage that's grown up when really you should have hacked it back a while ago, and give yourself quite a thorough prune. And it's quite hard to do that in real life. So that's why going on a retreat is a good idea. And that's kind of what we were all doing in October. So I'd like to introduce you to some of the lovely ladies who are on here. So first of all, we've got Liz. Give us a wave, Liz, who is in the fire temple at Broughton, which is where we do the retreats. And Liz and I lead the retreat together. And Liz is an amazing woman. She was once a very high-flying city solicitor, and now she takes people on forest bathing meditations and is a all-round much more relaxed kind of person and happier. And there she is in the fire temple. So tell us a bit about where you are, Liz.
So as you say, I'm in the fire temple on the Broughton Hall estate where we held the last retreat. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful space. 3,000 acres. It's been in the Tempest family for almost 1,000 years. And maybe if we've got time, I'm going to show you around a bit more, around the Avalon, where we hold some of the group work. It's an amazing state-of-the-art wellbeing centre. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to be able to do that for you.
It's so nice to see Liz there. It brings back so many memories. And then also with us on the call, we've got Jackie. Give us a wave. I know you haven't got that much time, so we'll come to you in a minute. And lovely Wendy Lloyd, and Aviva Wittenberg-Cox, who is a very distinguished kind of coach and kind of gender person. I think it's a good way to describe you, and is a real expert in midlife as well. And she's also a Forbes columnist, and she's currently at Harvard doing a very special later, I don't know quite how to describe what you're doing, but
it's a retreat. It's just a very long retreat.
It's a year-long retreat. Yes, so tell us a bit about it. Anyway, Aviva came on our first retreat and wrote about it in her column in Forbes magazine, and really loved it. And so I'm so glad she's here with us today. She's joining us all the way from Harvard. So Aviva, tell us a bit about what you felt it was about when you came. What the purpose of a midlife reboot is.
Well, I'm, as you can see, doing a deep dive into all things transition. And I just think we misunderestimate at this stage and age of life that can be quite wide-ranging, but the extraordinary turbulence and self-questioning and almost adolescent angst that can hit when it's time to leave things behind and move on. And we have this societal message and self-expectation that we're grown up and settled. And the reality, I think, for many of us that we discover somewhere, usually post-50, that actually we have to entirely recreate. And so I think the issue is, how do you do that? Where do you do that? And with whom do you do that? And I think I can't recommend enough. I think Eleanor's hit this little trio on the head with her own delightful self. And Liz, you can hear it in her voice and accent. It's just, the calm and the storm, those two ladies, just exactly what you need. Dosing of head and nature. the place, which is serenity and values and history personified, and then the group of women that these two manage to attract is exactly the kind of people you want to hang out with, because you don't want to do this alone. It's almost impossible, I've discovered, to do alone. And so doing it with a bunch of people and just focusing for a handful of days on yourself as a product you want to redo, rethink, and recreate is essential, I think. It's not optional. Don't think this is optional. This is essential. It's just a question of where and when.
No, and I really think Aviva's right that it also shortcuts a lot of angst along the way. And it may seem like quite a big investment in yourself, and women are not great at investing in themselves, but actually it's really necessary. And it's almost only after you do it that you kind of realize how massively necessary it was. Jackie, do you want to talk a little bit about how you found it? And then I'm going to come to you, Wendy, just what your kind of key takeaway was, or why you would recommend someone to do it, Jackie.
Yeah, sure. I was thinking about this today and how I would describe the retreat and how I could sort of explain what I'd got out of it. And it's quite difficult to do because I got so much out of it, but how I can sort of pinpoint it is hard to say. Very briefly, I was at a crossroads when I came to the retreat last October as a result of taking early redundancy from a great job. I used to work for Greggs the Bakers, managing their foundation, and I'd been out of that for a while. For reasons to, I'd moved to the southeast and got married and thought everything was sorted and I was going to become a lady of leisure. And actually, in the end, that wasn't enough. I broke my leg in a bad accident and was trying to get back into it. And then COVID hit. So it was a real time of turbulence, as you've said. And I just felt I was at that crossroads and I wanted to do something, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And Noon popped up, a recommendation from a friend. I thought, this looks great, but what really is it all about? So I took a leap of faith and thought, I'm going to do something for me. Didn't quite know what to expect. Turned up at Broughton that day on a glorious, glorious day, drove over the moors and the hills, came down, and the first thing you think is, wow, what a beautiful place. And then just launched into it. And it was a combination of, the content. It wasn't like, I've been on retreats before, and yoga retreats, you couldn't describe it like any other, because there was all the lovely stuff. There was the nature and the spa, which was fabulous, the best spa I've ever been to in my life, the yoga, but a lot of it was about the people. Well, most of it was about the people, to be honest, both Eleanor and the speakers, who were all inspirational, interesting, but the other women on the retreat as well. All very different, all of a similar age, but all sort of at a crossroads looking for something. But we just got on so well. And I honestly think I got as much from the other people on the retreat. I must say, I can see Liz's finger there, just a shout out to Liz. Wow. I mean, Liz was fabulous. And forest bathing, tree hugging. I actually did hug a tree, but that's not what it's about. I never thought I would enjoy something like that so much. And the wild swimming, that makes you feel fabulous. But just all the speakers, the food, the experience. And I had a look at what I'd done on my feedback straight afterwards. And I said, go, you won't regret it. After the last tough 18 months, it felt like a tonic for the mind and soul, time spent in a glorious location with like-minded, inspirational women. And I left feeling renewed, inspired, and more positive about the future than I had for a long time, with fresh ideas, practical advice for the next stage, and a bunch of new friends. And that was then, but it's sort of something now. And since then, I've got a couple of job offers. We're buying a new house, and I wasn't in a great place when I went, and I've been in a great place ever since. So thank you to Eleanor, and I would do it all over again in a heartbeat.
Oh, thank you, Jackie. Honestly, that's so sweet of you to say. And we're not just putting Jackie on here because she's the only one who says this. We had a little celebration for our turn for Noon being one the other day, and we invited all the ladies who come on the retreat to come. And this lovely woman came up to me and she gave me a hug and she said, "You've changed my life." It actually completely made my year. It really did. She was so happy, and she said that the retreat had just been such a massive shift for her. So that was so lovely to hear. And she'd come all the way down from Nottingham especially to tell us how much it had meant to her. So, and she really wanted me to say that to you today. So Wendy, you were another one who came. Tell us a bit about how you found it. Oh yes, Wendy is a professional radio voice artist, but she's having problems unmuting her mic. You're still muted, Wendy. You're still muted. I can't unmute you. Jen, can you unmute Wendy? Oh no.
Here we go.
Okay, cool.
I think I'm unmuted now. It's typical, isn't it? Yeah, well, that was professional of me. Yeah, I mean, everything Jackie said and then some. Yeah, it was terrific. And as Aviva said, you know, I think it is so true that it's very easy to, you know, to kind of agonize over deciding to do something like this and going, oh, you know, do I deserve this? It's a time out. It's, you know, it's some money. It's, you know, and what will it be? How can I guarantee that, you know, I will get something from it? And it's true that, you know, we do need to think of things like this and on all aspects of self-care as just so much more, you know, integral to, you know, really enabling us to be the people that we actually can be. And I think this retreat for me was, you know, I think for anybody who chooses to do something like this, it's often kind of like, you know, crossroads things and various things come together timing wise. For me, I was just coming to the end of actually having done 8 years of higher education, doing a degree and then a postgrad, which had been a fantastic journey. And then I wasn't really sure where I wanted to go. I also needed some self-care. I'd had a major kind of health crisis last summer, which I'm thankfully beyond and feeling good. But the retreat was definitely, you know, the kind of nurturing that I really needed. And as Jackie said, it was, you know, in some ways it's a bit of a leap of faith because you don't really know how, you know, how the courses are going to kind of like manifest and what we're going to do. We knew there would be some element of nature, and Liz just took us on these incredible journeys into nature. And it began with this forest bathing, which immediately on day one just sort of brought us all into this new space and energy, which was really key, I think, to kind of putting us all in on a same wavelength. And, you know, it progressed from there. And the speakers, as Jackie said, the place, the food, you know, the other women that we kind of got to spend time with, it was just really nurturing. And, you know, I feel like there was so much of it which sits within me and I kind of hark back to and think about, and it really has been really very powerful for me in terms of, you know, deciding now what I'm doing next and just making those decisions at this point in my life.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that that so many of you have a kind of similar experience, and Liz, of course, is absolutely kind of key to this. She's sitting there being kind of very quiet with her fire, but actually Liz is really a very, very key ingredient to why it's so magical. Because I think for lots of us who live in cities and have very busy lives, to go somewhere and to, I mean, the last time I'd been in a forest and just been in a forest, not on a walk, kind of where I was talking, but just in a forest, listening, being there. Can't remember the last time I felt like a 6-year-old kid in my wellies kind of playing in the stream. It kind of made you remember things that you'd completely forgotten you ever did. What do you think of Eva?
I just wanted to chime in to triangulate a little bit because Eleanor is never going to say what I'm going to say, so I'm going to say it for her, which is a lot of the power behind this is Eleanor's vision. It's this extraordinarily smart, powerful, eloquent woman who is role modeling to all of us how to move on, how to pivot from big jobs, how to do it, take your courage by two hands, say screw it to the people who have to be left behind, and then who craft this dream that was nothing but a dream just a short 18 months ago. And so I think that kind of really powerful model, and she's funny and fun and personable, and you spend the whole week with her. And I think that's a powerful kind of, she doesn't mean it that way, but she ends up being a really powerful mentor and model, which combined with Liz's sort of calm tree hugging personality, which is very essential balancing, is definitely part of the formula. So yes, it's the women that come. Yes, it's all of that thing. And it's very, very much infused by the vision and intelligence of the founder.
Oh, that's so sweet of you to say. I'm blushing. I'm going to try and take my own medicine and learn to take a compliment graciously, because it is certainly a manifestation of my dream. I kind of was gifted the idea of doing this on a retreat that I was on myself, and I had a vision that I could do this and I could make people feel so much better about themselves, and that it was going to be all right, that we can hit this point in life and it's not the end, it's the beginning of an amazing new period. We've done this research at Noon about queenagers, and I really think it's when we move into our power, it's when we become the women we're supposed to be. It's like all those things that we're lucky enough to have gone through, and we've got to 50 and we've survived, or whatever. And now it's like, okay, you can shed all that stuff. Aviva talks about this brilliantly, about all these expectations that have been put on you, and kind of at this point you can put them down and you go, well, who am I? And if I'm not going to be me now, when am I going to be me? And that's really what it's all about. And it's kind of really trying to get everybody to that point where they realize, we say at Noon, so much more to come. We really mean it. We deserve joy, purpose, all the good stuff, lots of fun, lots of laughs, but also a really kind of deepening sense of valuing ourselves and what that looks like in the years going forward. And it's not easy. I mean, I've cried a lot in the last 2 years, and finding one's true voice comes with lots of pain. So I'm not promising you an easy fix. I am promising you something that if you go through, you'll come out of it transformed and much more essentially you than you've ever felt before. That's really what we're trying to do. And then I think from that place of real strength and truth and knowing really who you are, then you can move forward in a way that will work. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do for people. And what was amazing was I had this kind of dream of it, and it really seems to have worked. So that is amazing, with the help of all these incredible people. And I think somebody else has asked on the chat, do we select people to come on the retreat? I think it's a very self-selecting group. That was what we discovered last time. The people who wanted to come were the people who it was right for. Noon is an intelligent platform. I think pretty well all the women were, had careers, were definitely kind of people in their own rights. Some who got there through different paths. So it's not just about careers at all, but it's about really having a sense of what we might do next, and that we're not done, that we've got a lot to offer and a lot of wisdom to give, I think. Go on, Wendy.
Yeah, I was just going to say about that, in terms of anybody kind of watching and kind of thinking, well, but what did you do? What did you do? It really was this combination of stuff that, so it isn't just let's focus on what one wants to do next in terms of a career or in terms of something that kind of fills your day. We really covered a lot of ground in terms of, and as I said, beginning with the kind of natural spiritual connection with Liz, and that was kind of threaded throughout, and we had various kind of occasions being in the wonderful place where Liz is right now with the fire, also out in the forest, and various other things that kind of brought the natural into it. We did yoga, we had various sort of classes that looked at different things, which also then went into and introduced aspects that people might be concerned about in terms of their family, which certainly came up for me. And we really got to sort of look at holistically our lives at this point, and how all these things come into the decisions that we make at this point in our lives. So I think anybody kind of contemplating what it'll be about, it's like it will be quite wide ranging. And for many of us, it was quite an emotional journey. I spent, a lot of time crying. I'm a big crier anyway, so don't let that put you off. That's just me in any capacity. But it's definitely about jumping in and being open to just kind of giving yourself permission to kind of look at what's going on for you. And because you have the support of all the people around you at the retreat, this becomes very organic. It just becomes part of every day, and you just immerse yourself in this different kind of place during the retreat. Yeah.
Yeah, go Jackie. You need to demute yourself.
Unmute, yeah. Yeah, just to add to what Wendy's saying, and perhaps a little bit more. I'm not a big crier, so if that puts anybody off, I didn't cry. I spent a lot of my time sort of just quite wide-eyed with learning lots of new things and you know, as I said before, meeting new people. But you know, a bit more about the content as well. There were some very inspirational speakers. There was Tamsin, who'd written a book about her life on an island in the well, Outer Hebrides somewhere. Very, very inspirational woman. There was a lady who was in her 50s and had become a model, and she had previously been a teacher, I believe, Eleanor, but it just transformational stories about people who had turned their lives around, but were just also very, very interesting speakers. We did something called Constellations, which I thought, oh, this sounds a bit woo-woo, but in actual fact, it was really just finding out where you wanted to go next. And it was the sort of thing that you might do in a corporate retreat, but very, very interesting. And there was just such an awful lot of food for thought. And ladies put a message on about, she's liking the sharing so far this evening, Tanya, I think she's called. There was a lot of sharing, but in really positive ways, you know, and Eleanor's also mentioned a deep dive. You probably would end up talking to these people that you'd never met in your life before, in a way that you can't always do with your own friends. And perhaps that's because you've all come, you don't know anyone. It felt like a very safe space. But I mean, the word that kept coming to me then and still now is you know, inspirational. And I completely agree with what Aviva said about having Eleanor there the whole way through. She just brought it alive, and Eleanor and Liz just made it such a fun experience, and just such a special experience. You know, as I said at the start, hard to describe. I don't think you'll ever really get the opportunity to experience anything quite like it, and largely to do with Eleanor's vision and Liz as well.
Oh, thank you. Go on, Aviva.
I could just add, to build on what's being said, I think there are two qualities to this kind of retreat that are both quite essential. One is, yeah, it's a bunch of strangers, because one of the biggest challenges in transitions is trying to get help from people who are too attached to who you currently are, and leaving them behind and not listening to their voices, and actually getting people who are willing and free and totally unattached to what you decide to be next is one of the most powerful levers of change I know. And I'd say that the other thing that happens in this kind of a session is that it normalizes the situation you may find yourself in, so and reframes it a little bit. So I was just looking at the chat. I think it was Tanya hitting 60. I'm 62. It reframes a little bit your words that say that you have to pick apart your life, and just makes everybody there was reinventing. They were assessing where they came from, where they are, and where they want to go next. And where they want to go next might or might not require a complete reinvention. It might mean dumping the husband, the job, the preconditions, the parent, whatever it is. There may be something needing to come out of every single person there. And this just gives it the space and the time to make that not a weird, risky, scary, unusual, lonely journey, but an absolutely natural part of growing up.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I talk a lot at Noon about the new tribe and the importance of a new tribe if you want to become a new person. Because you can't, well, it's not even wanting to become a new person, but it's just wanting to shift into doing something a bit different. And all the people who are around you all the time have such a vested interest in you staying in your box the way that you were. So I think if you're feeling your box is getting a bit tight, or you're a bit bored of it, or a woman said to me that she felt like she was sleepwalking through her own life, that she just didn't feel like she'd chosen any of it, and was like, how did I end up here? So it's a real opportunity to get yourself kind of back onto a track that you actually want to be on. And I think women are so good at doing what everybody else wants them to do, and we don't really ask ourselves in the maelstrom of looking after everybody else and juggling a career or whatever it is we're doing, caring for other people, what do I want? You know, what do I choose? And we're in midlife. We haven't got epic amounts of time left. I mean, I call Noon because of the book The 100-Year Life, because at noon at 50 you're halfway through. So I thought Noon was a good way of thinking about that. But it's probably true that we've had more water under the bridge than we've got left. So if you're going to do that thing that your heart craves, or you're just going to shift and do something else, now's the moment. And so I think that this kind of a retreat and a new tribe can help you do that thing you've always wanted to do and kind of give you courage. And I think all the women also stick together and do that. And I'm in the process of doing that myself. So I really do understand how hard it is and how much you have to give and what that looks like. But also I know it's possible with amazing supportive people around us. Liz, are you going to, I think Liz, lovely Liz, is going to give us a little taste of what there is at Broughton. I'm not quite sure whether. So this is, have a look around the fire temple. This is going to take, so what we do on one evening, we think about what we want to leave behind and we burn it on fire. Liz is going to show us the fire. So the fire means a lot to all of us.
I just can't, oh, here we go. There we go, great. So this is an amazing space. This is the fire temple, as you can see. It's only a small fire because there's only me here, but I can really get a big fire going. And we were dancing in here. It was absolutely great fun, really was. Just letting it go, just letting go. And then we come out here, and this is the labyrinth. So here we're talking about just giving ourselves some space. So just taking a really slow walk around this labyrinth really allows ourselves to meet ourselves again. You know, a lot of us don't have time for that in our everyday lives. You know, so busy rushing around, and like Eleanor says, you know, we never have time to ask ourselves, what do I need today? What's good for me? So just coming on this retreat is an ideal opportunity to give yourself that space. So we're just walking over to Avalon, which is, as I said earlier, a state-of-the-art wellbeing centre with an amazing pool suite that I'm going to show you. But just a little bit more about the estate. Call it Broughton Sanctuary. And it really is a sanctuary. You know, we're very much interested not only in our inner nature transformation, but outer nature too. You know, there's a fantastic nature recovery program that's been going on for a couple of years. You know, planted 250,000 trees last year, and there'll be quite a few more going in yet. So I might just lose signal just for a second while it switches over to Wi-Fi, but I'll be back with you.
Liz has done that. She's made it look very effortless. It's actually a reasonable distance. You must have been moving quite fast. Okay, here we are. We're going. This is the spa, and I've been lucky enough to stay in some pretty amazing places in my life because I was a journalist. And this is as good as any spa I've ever been to anywhere in the world: California, Maldives, Thailand, anywhere. Are you back on?
I haven't switched over to Wi-Fi yet.
It's a bit scratchy. So this is the lobby and going into the spa. Broughton Hall is a 3,000-acre estate which has been owned by Roger Tempest's family for 1,000 years, and him and his wife and their baby Aya still live there, and they built this sanctuary. Paris, the new Chatelaine of Broughton, is an incredible yin yoga teacher and plays the crystal balls. She comes and does that for us on one of the days that we're there. And she has built this sanctuary, this place with her husband. And it's all based on Fibonacci principles.
That's right. How's the signal? Are we back on?
Perfect. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. So I'll just take you through to the Fibonacci spirals, the Eleanor has just been spoken about there throughout the sanctuary. And here is the beautiful pool suite.
It's got a beautiful lady lying outside the windows.
That's right, yeah, you can see it just through the window. And then here we have a hydrotherapy pool. So that's really super. And you get the jets going. And then through here, it's a beautiful sauna and steam room.
I feel so, seeing you there, Liz, I so want to jump in the pool. We spend every evening between 5 and 7. You could use the spa for as long as you like. We would all sit in the jacuzzi and chat and swim up and down. Aviva and I put the world to rights many a time, swimming links, sitting in the steam room.
Yeah. My camera steamed up, I wonder.
Yeah, your camera's got all steamy. But it really is, and also in Avalon, I'm sure Liz will take us in the moment, are the most amazing studios where we do a lot of our kind of workshops and some of the yoga and kind of movement stuff.
I'll really take you to the group room. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. You're still a bit foggy. Okay, so this is and the point about this incredible spa is that this is not open to the public. This is a completely private spa. That's only right. For use only for use by guests on the retreat. So it's not like there are hundreds of people chomping through here all the time. There's nobody there but us. It's absolute heaven. I've never been anywhere like it. Really? And that's true of the hall as well, where we stay inside this massive stately home. And again, we sit around in the drawing room after dinner in our pajamas if you want to. You can be there in your slippers. It's not like staying in a hotel or any other place I've ever been. This is where we do a lot of our workshops. This is the best.
Yeah, and just to add to that Roger really does encourage people to treat we've got 14 holiday homes on the estate, to really treat these spaces as your own home when you're here, you know. So yeah, it is a stately home, but a very homely, stately home.
The whole, I think part of the reason the retreat always feels so special as well is because it's just such an incredible treat to treat somewhere like that as if it's your home, and the people who own it treat us as very much as their family. You become part of a kind of broader Broughton tribe. This beautiful staircase. Bye, Jackie. Thank you so much for joining. She's got to go and do something with you. She's got to go. Lovely, Jackie. See you soon, darling.
Thank you. Lovely to speak to you all. Bye.
Yeah.
And
bye,
lovely to see you, Jackie.
So there's a bit more tour of the spa. Is there anybody who's got any kind of particular questions you'd like us to address? Because I don't want to keep my very generous people who rejoined us for too long. And Aviva, I'd just like to come back to you. You wrote so beautifully about how this is what you thought women in midlife are now being called to do, and you've done such brilliant work and thinking on this kind of midlife moment. What would you say to somebody who was kind of wavering or wondering what they were going to get out of it?
It is one of those really hard things to kind of sell to people because they don't know they need it, right? And I think that's one of the challenges with midlife is as I said, you think you're grown up and you shouldn't need this sort of rethink. And I think that's what we need collectively to revisit, that we actually keep growing all the way through life. We never get old, really, if we choose to keep growing and keep learning and keep self-questioning. And so I think this is not the last retreat you should do. The invitation I would suggest is actually to introduce or consider this kind of process much more regularly in life, because the older you get, the more entrenched people tend to become if they don't really proactively dive a bit deeper and a bit more regularly. So I think if this hasn't been part of your process to date, it's never too late, but I would really recommend that it become part of becoming mature and serene and reflective and harvesting the life you've had.
No, I think that that's so true. And the thing that really stayed with me from that wonderful book, The 100-Year Life, was that in 100-year life, we're all going to go through lots of different stages. And the idea that you get educated, you work for a bit and then you retire, is not how it works anymore. We all do various things and we shift through them and we go on to something else. And so this idea of the transition and how you help people through transition is really crucial. I didn't actually read any of that till after I'd had this vision of helping people with a transformational experience, partly because I think I really needed one so badly myself. And it's a long process, but what I will say is that when you do it and you move into a new phase, you feel so much more alive. You just kind of feel like you're back in touch with a kind of self which wasn't hemmed in by kind of like dead skin and calluses and kind of old ways of thinking. It's like you give yourself a fresh fall of snow and you come down that piste and you can carve your line for the first time without going around the moguls where everyone else has gone. I think it's a good feeling.
And I think I would just add that, you're absolutely right. Transitions aren't really dependent on age. They can be dependent on circumstance, life, crises, war. All those things invite a transition. Sometimes they happen to you. Sometimes you're the initiator, but whichever one, I think what both Eleanor and I have picked up over these few years of focusing on this topic is there are particular skills to transitioning well. And I say we all need to become much more skilled transitionists and understand that I call it the 4 phases of transition: leaving, looking, loving, leaping. It's each of those steps have subtasks and phases, and it just helps to know what they are. Otherwise, you're just in what often is called the messy middle, the confusing fog of change, which is very normal. And people don't know it's normal. So you think you're nuts, but you're not nuts. You're transitioning. And that's really helps to know.
In fact, the most helpful thing that anybody said to me in the middle of my own transition was, change is difficult. I was really upset. And he just said to me, change is difficult. And I found that an immensely freeing statement, because it was saying you're allowed to find it hard. Everybody finds it hard. It's really sad. You're losing bits of yourself. You're finding bits of yourself. You feel like a kind of newborn kind of lamb which doesn't have any skin anymore, and that's good as well as bad. But it's a process. It's like you're coming out of your chrysalis, or kind of getting into it, or realizing you're in a chrysalis and you need to get out. That's the beginning. So I think
I'll just say that there were quite a few years when I was a lawyer, that I knew that I needed to get out. I knew that a career in law wasn't for me, but I didn't know how. And I didn't know if I'd have had a resource like Noon, I just know that I would have taken that leap much sooner than I did, just to know that I had this supportive network around me, and to meet other people who had gone through a change to give me some kind of guidance and direction. I could have saved myself quite a few years of suffering, quite frankly, really. I just didn't know where to turn. But like I say, had Noon been around it and people who were connected with me, it would have been much easier.
And I just want to add a note that for not everybody is it hard, right? Different people have quite different attitudes to change. And if some of you might be like me, that the excitement of the blank page is much more entertaining than the day-to-day repetition of the same life, the same everybody. And so all of that may not be exactly where you are, and that there's a whole other chapter that may be, this is just a wonderful diving board of people willing to swim along as you leap into these very bracing new waters.
Yeah, I was just going to add that, it was interesting, Liz was saying about, you knew for a long time that it was something you really wanted to do, but you didn't really have the resources. I think for me at the moment where I'm at is that I feel a lot more ambitious about thinking about what I want to do. I feel like it's this whole thing of the permission and having these other people around you and accepting that change is difficult, and just because it's difficult doesn't mean you're getting it wrong. I think all of that can help you actually then say, well, then what do I really want to do, and am I limiting myself, and to kind of just question those limitations that we can almost automatically put on ourselves, especially when we're trying to do it on our own. And I think that's one of the key things I've gotten out of this is recognizing every step of the way now there are people I can run it by and reach out to, and Eleanor is such an inspiration in terms of, because you've done this yourself, and this, you know, this very thing that Noon is a manifestation of your change and of thinking outside of what you had thought you were and who you would be. And I just think, you know, it's very powerful to kind of, it's all that connection and just kind of looking at things in a different way with like-minded people at a similar time and a similar place is very powerful, definitely.
Oh, thank you so much for that, Wendy. And thanks, Liz. I think you're right. And I really do think that being in that beautiful place, which just has such an incredible, I think it has such an incredible kind of energy of possibility. I think its roots are so firmly in itself because that family have been there for 1,000 years in the same spot, that it kind of somehow gives you a bit of that rootedness and that sense of, you know, sense of purpose or moving forward.
Absolutely, but the spaciousness as well. You know, it's that, you know, when we go walking up to the wild swimming pond or up to the stones on the hill, you know, just having that, well, you know, you've got the spaciousness literally, you know, but this, and it gives you this spaciousness in your mind as well. You know, just allowing yourself just to be, you know, which is again such a rare thing that we experience, but it's in that state of being and not thinking, you know, that this is where new ideas can manifest essentially, without forcing anything, just allowing, you know, whatever is inside of you to come through. It's that spaciousness that allows it.
Yeah, and I think choosing to go on the retreat is also a kind of investment in your own spaciousness.
Absolutely.
Or the own sense of your own spacious possibilities for the future. And that's really what we're trying to provide. So that's why we thought it was a good idea to kind of do a little chat about this rather than trying to kind of boil it down into a paragraph which goes on an Eventbrite, which is what we've been trying to do. So I really hope that this has been helpful. It's a very kind of small cozy group. We all eat together, hang out in the jacuzzi together, walk together. But you could, of course, all can retreat back to your own very beautiful and sumptuous room. Aviva was quite partial to taking her book and going and sitting by the fire of an evening, which was very lovely. And there's a beautiful conservatory, and there's just so many lovely spaces to be. And in fact, the only piece of feedback from the last retreat was that I shouldn't drive them so hard with such a kind of program, because I'm always one for like cramming in more ideas, more speakers. They were like, no, can we just have a bit less, please, so we can just wander around the garden and do some journaling and just kind of be where we are. So I've taken that on board for the next one. So I'd just, you know, really like to thank you all so much, everyone who came on to talk about it, and all of you who've come on to listen. And I hope that that's been helpful. And if there's any other questions you've got, just get in touch. And a big thank you to Aviva and Wendy and Liz and lovely Jen, who is hiding behind the Noon logo, but is also very much part of the retreat and was there with us last time. So I really hope you'll come and be part of our Noon family. And that we'll all be hanging out where Liz is in a very few number of weeks' time. Lucky Liz gets to be there all the time.
Yeah.
And Aviva, so thanks so much for joining all the way from Harvard. I can't wait to hear more about your trip, and thanks for your kind words, all of you. And I hope we'll see lots of you who are on the call soon.
Ciao, ciao. They're lovely speaking with you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.